The wine glass clinked against the table as Mark raised it high above his head. "Let's toast to Lena's hobby," my brother announced, his voice cutting through the comfortable chatter of our family dinner. "Maybe one day it'll be a real business." I sat frozen, fork halfway to my mouth, as laughter rippled around my parents' dining room. My mother smiled uncomfortably. My father stared at his plate. Mark's wife rolled her eyes like I was some embarrassing relative who couldn't take a joke. But this wasn't a joke to me. I'd just spent 10 minutes excitedly explaining how my small operations consulting firm had finally landed 2 clients. Real companies with real problems that I could help solve. Mark worked at Northgate Industries, a massive manufacturing company downtown. He wore expensive suits and talked about quarterly projections like they were the only things that mattered. "We're tightening our contractor requirements," he continued, swirling his wine. "Companies like Northgate would never work with someone small or unproven. No offense, sis." Everyone nodded like he'd said something wise. I swallowed hard, forcing down the humiliation with my bite of chicken. This was the last time he would laugh at me. I made it to my car before the tears came. Sitting in the darkness of my parents' driveway, I replayed every word. Every smirk. Every dismissive glance. This wasn't the first time Mark had belittled me. Growing up, he was always the successful one, the athlete, the scholar, the favorite. I was the girl who tried too hard and never quite measured up. Maybe he was right. Maybe my business was just a hobby. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from Mrs. Torres, my smallest client, the owner of a family packaging company I'd helped last month. "Lena, I wanted to thank you again. Your process recommendations saved us over $15,000 this quarter. You're a lifesaver." I played it twice. $15,000. That wasn't a hobby. That was real impact. I wiped my eyes and stared at the steering wheel. What if I stopped trying to impress Mark and just focused on building something he couldn't ignore? What if I stopped apologizing for being small and started proving I was essential? That night, I spread my business files across my apartment floor. The numbers were intimidating. 3 clients total. Barely breaking even. Operating on savings and hope. But as I reviewed each project, I noticed a pattern. Every client had the same core problem. Inefficient processes that bled money slowly. Small changes made massive differences. Streamlined workflows, better inventory systems, smarter scheduling. I was good at this. I just needed to stop underpricing my services out of fear and start targeting companies that actually needed serious help. I opened my laptop and searched for mid-sized manufacturers in the region. Companies big enough to have real budgets but small enough to still have operational chaos. One name caught my eye immediately. Northgate Industries. Mark's company. According to recent business reports, they were experiencing shipping delays and rising costs. Exactly the problems I specialized in solving. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. Not yet. I wasn't ready for Northgate. But someday, I would be. I spent the next 3 months refusing shortcuts. Instead of rushing toward big contracts, I invested in myself. I enrolled in evening certification courses for process optimization and lean manufacturing. I rewrote my proposals to emphasize measurable results instead of vague promises. Most importantly, I stopped apologizing for being small. When I pitched to a mid-sized automotive parts supplier, I walked in with confidence I'd earned through actual results, not borrowed from anyone's approval. My firm specializes in operational efficiency for manufacturers, I explained to their operations manager. I've helped companies reduce waste by an average of 23% within 6 months. I showed them case studies. Clean data. Before and after comparisons. They hired me on the spot. 2 weeks into the project, their manager pulled me aside. "We compete directly with Northgate Industries," he said casually. "They've been struggling lately. Logistics nightmares, from what I hear. Bleeding money." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. But inside, something shifted. Northgate was vulnerable. And I was getting stronger. Word spread faster than I expected. By month 5, I had 6 active clients. My calendar filled with consultations. Small business magazines started noticing the regional success stories I was quietly building. A local business journal ran a tiny profile on me, buried on page 12 of their quarterly edition. Local consultant helps manufacturers cut costs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I texted the article to my mother, hoping she might mention it to the family. She replied, "That's nice, dear." Mark never acknowledged it. That same week, I stayed up late finishing a proposal for a new client. My email pinged at nearly midnight. The sender was unfamiliar. Northgate Industries procurement team. My heart stopped. "We're assembling a pool of consultants for operational review. Your name was recommended by industry contacts. Would you be available for an exploratory call next Tuesday?" I read it 3 times. They didn't know I was Mark's sister. The inquiry was completely professional, based purely on my growing reputation. I replied immediately, "Yes, I'm available." The Zoom call included 5 people from Northgate's leadership team. I recognized the CFO and operations director from the company website. Mark wasn't on the call, he worked in a different division. They described their problems with careful corporate language: supply chain inefficiencies, rising operational costs, partnership tensions. Translation: chaos. I listened carefully, taking notes, asking clarifying questions. "What we need," the CFO explained, "is someone who can come in quietly, assess the real issues without politics, and propose practical solutions. Not another expensive firm that promises miracles and delivers reports." I understood immediately. They'd been burned before. "I work differently," I said. "I don't do flashy presentations. I interview your people, examine your actual workflows, and identify specific bottlenecks. Then I build measurable pilot programs. If they work, we expand. If they don't, we adjust." The operations director leaned forward. "How quickly could you start?" "Within 2 weeks." They exchanged glances. "This would need to remain confidential until we see results," the CFO warned. "We can't afford internal panic." I nodded. Understood. My pilot project started on a cold Monday morning. Northgate's operations floor was enormous: machinery, conveyor systems, loading docks stretching across a warehouse that felt like an airport hangar. I spent the first week simply watching and listening. I talked to floor supervisors, machine operators, shipping coordinators. I asked them what slowed them down, what frustrated them, where the system broke. They were surprisingly honest. Most consultants, they explained, only talked to executives. Nobody ever asked the people doing the actual work. One shipping manager named Carlos showed me scheduling logs. "See these gaps?" He pointed to empty delivery windows. "Someone upstairs decided we could cut our logistics staff by 30%. Now we can't keep up. Shipments run late, customers get angry, and we pay overtime just to barely function." I documented everything carefully. As I traced the decision trail, I discovered something troubling. The cost-cutting initiative that gutted their logistics department had been championed 18 months ago by someone in operations management. The name on the approval documents: Mark Henley. My brother. I sat in my hotel room that night, staring at the documents. Mark's signature appeared on multiple cost reduction proposals. Each one looked impressive on paper: cutting payroll, reducing inventory buffers, streamlining processes. But on the floor, they'd created disaster. Fewer workers meant delayed shipments. Smaller inventories meant production stoppages. Streamlined processes meant no flexibility when problems arose. He'd optimized for quarterly reports, not operational reality. I could have exposed him immediately. Could have walked into the CFO's office and pointed fingers. But that wasn't how I worked. Instead, I compiled clean, factual analysis. I showed cause and effect without attaching blame to individuals. The data spoke for itself. My pilot program focused on one shipping department. I proposed modest staff increases, better scheduling software, and smarter inventory positioning. Within 3 weeks, their on-time delivery rate jumped from 62% to 89%. The CFO called me personally. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Can you expand this? I took a breath. Yes. But the full analysis will reveal some uncomfortable truths about previous decisions. Silence on the line. Good, he finally said. That's exactly what we need. 2 months later, my parents hosted another family dinner. I almost didn't go. But curiosity won. Mark arrived late, talking loudly about Northgate's upcoming major restructuring that he claimed to be leading. Big changes coming, he announced, pouring himself wine. We're finally getting serious about efficiency. I stayed quiet, cutting my vegetables with careful precision. His phone rang during dessert. He glanced at the screen, and his confident smile faltered. I need to take this, he muttered, stepping onto the back patio. Through the window, I watched his posture change. His free hand gestured frantically. His face reddened. When he returned, the swagger was gone. He barely spoke for the rest of the evening. When someone asked about work, he snapped, "It's complicated." His eyes found mine across the table, suspicious, searching. I smiled politely and asked my mother about her garden. But I knew. Somewhere in Northgate's executive offices, people were asking questions Mark couldn't answer. The rumors at Northgate spread quickly. Someone was cleaning up the mess. An outside consultant who actually fixed problems instead of just documenting them. Workers started approaching me directly with concerns, bypassing their managers. They trusted me because I'd proven I listened. Mark, meanwhile, grew increasingly paranoid. According to Carlos, he'd started micromanaging departments he'd never cared about before, demanding reports, questioning decisions, trying to control narratives. It only made things worse. One afternoon, the HR director requested a confidential meeting. She sat across from me in a small conference room, her expression serious. "We've received excellent feedback about your work," she began. "But we're also aware that some of the operational issues you've identified trace back to specific management decisions." I waited. "We need to know if you can remain objective. This can't become personal or political." I met her eyes directly. "I work with data. I document facts. I don't participate in office politics because it undermines solutions. If my findings create discomfort, that means they're honest." She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Good. Because you're going to present to the board next month." The boardroom was on the top floor, glass walls overlooking the city, leather chairs around a massive table. I'd prepared for 3 days straight. My presentation was clean, data-driven, focused entirely on solutions. I showed them the pilot results, the expansion potential, and the projected savings. Over $5 million in the first year alone. Then came the hard part. A board member, an older woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. "Ms. Henley, your analysis suggests that previous cost-cutting measures actually increased our expenses. Can you elaborate?" I pulled up a comparison slide. These initiatives reduced payroll costs but created downstream inefficiencies that cost significantly more. Delayed shipments led to penalty fees and lost contracts. Reduced inventory caused production stoppages. The savings were illusory. Whose initiatives were these? The room went silent. I could have named Mark. Could have pulled up the approval documents with his signature. Instead, I said, the decisions followed standard corporate logic at the time. The problem wasn't malicious, it was incomplete data. The people who made these choices didn't have visibility into operational impacts. Fair. Honest. Professional. The CFO caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. After the presentation, he pulled me aside. "Prepare your company for something bigger. We'll be in touch." Mark knew something was wrong. At Northgate, people whispered about an outside consultant whose recommendations were actually working. Board members were asking pointed questions about previous initiatives. He complained to his wife about parasites who second-guess real managers. According to my mother, who heard it from his wife during a phone call, he'd spent an entire evening ranting about consultants who lived off real companies while contributing nothing. His wife had apparently defended the consultant. "But their reports are actually fixing things," she'd said. That had made him angrier. He became obsessed with discovering who this consultant was. He demanded to see their reports. He pushed his manager for information. But the project remained confidential. Even most employees didn't know my name, they just knew someone was helping. One evening, my mother called. "Mark seems stressed lately," she said carefully. "Problems at work. He won't talk about it." "That's too bad," I replied neutrally. "You wouldn't know anything about it, would you? You work with manufacturers." I chose my words carefully. "I work with several companies. I can't discuss clients." She accepted that. But I heard the question underneath. Was I involved? Northgate launched a full operational audit. Every department, every process, every cost center. I was now central to the review, but still operating as an external consultant. Most employees knew me only as the efficiency specialist. Mark still hadn't connected the dots. My documentation protected me completely. Every recommendation was backed by worker interviews, efficiency data, and cost-benefit analysis. Nothing personal. Nothing political. Just facts. Then the calendar notification appeared. Full leadership review meeting, all department heads required. Including Mark. I stared at the email for a long time. This was it. The moment when everything would become visible. I could have warned him. Could have given him time to prepare. But he'd had 18 months to check whether his initiatives were actually working. He'd chosen not to. I confirmed my attendance and prepared my materials. The truth was about to walk into the room, sit down at the table, and introduce itself. The conference room filled with Northgate's leadership team. Mark sat 3 seats down from me, reviewing his phone. He glanced up briefly when I entered but didn't recognize me as anything other than some consultant. The meeting began with the CFO reviewing the audit's purpose. "We're here to understand what happened and how to move forward. No blame, just clarity." Then my presentation began playing on the screen. Charts showing the decline in delivery performance. Graphs illustrating the correlation between staff cuts and rising costs. Timeline overlays connecting specific decisions to operational breakdowns. I sat quietly to the side, letting the data speak. Mark's face slowly changed as he watched. Confusion became recognition, became horror. He saw his signature on the approval documents displayed on the screen. He saw the damage trail his decisions had created. His eyes found mine across the table. I watched the realization hit him. The consultant everyone had been whispering about was his little sister. The one whose business was a joke. The CEO paused the presentation. "We'll hold questions. First, I want to hear the corrective partner's full proposal." Mark's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I stood and walked to the front of the room. "Thank you for the opportunity," I began, my voice steady. "The analysis you've seen documents what happened. Now I'd like to focus on solutions." I outlined a phased restructuring plan. Modest staff increases in critical areas. Better data systems for decision-making. Training programs for managers to understand operational impacts. Nothing punitive. Nothing vindictive. Just careful, measured fixes. Mark finally found his voice. You can't just come in here and... The CEO raised a hand, cutting him off. "Mr. Henley, you'll have time to respond. Let her finish." I continued, professional and calm, never looking directly at my brother. I explained how we could implement these changes without disrupting production. How we could measure success. How we could prevent similar problems in the future. When I finished, the room was silent. The CEO looked around the table. Questions. Several people asked about timelines, costs, and implementation details. I answered each one clearly. Mark sat frozen, his face pale. Finally, the CEO stood. "Thank you all. We'll take a brief recess. Ms. Henley, please stay. Everyone else, we'll reconvene in 20 minutes." The room emptied slowly. Mark was the last to leave, his eyes burning into me as he passed. The CEO closed the door behind the last executive. Only 3 people remained, the CEO, the CFO, and me. Ms. Henley, the CEO began, we'd like to discuss a longer-term arrangement. I'd expected a contract extension. Maybe a larger consulting role. What he proposed was something entirely different. We want to offer your firm a strategic partnership. Not as a temporary consultant, but as an independent partner with oversight authority on operations. You'd have real influence over how this company makes decisions. I kept my expression neutral, but my heart raced. This would require absolute transparency, ethics, and independence, the CFO added. You'd need to maintain objectivity even when it's uncomfortable. I understand. The CEO slid a folder across the table. Review the terms. We'd like an answer within 48 hours. I opened the folder. The numbers were staggering, a 5-year partnership agreement worth more than I'd made in the last 3 years combined. But it was more than money. It was legitimacy, authority, respect. Everything I'd been building toward. I'll need to review this with my attorney, I said. Of course. Take your time. But Ms. Henley, the CEO paused. This opportunity exists because you never made this personal. You could have destroyed your brother's career. Instead, you focused on fixing problems. That's the kind of partner we need. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I met with my attorney and accountant the next morning. They spent 4 hours reviewing every clause of the partnership agreement. This is legitimate, my attorney finally said. Very favorable terms. They're essentially making you an external board advisor with contractual protection. What's the catch? I asked. The catch is you have to maintain complete independence. The moment you become political or personal, the agreement terminates. They're betting on your integrity. My accountant looked up from his laptop. Lena, this will change your life. Your business will triple in size overnight. You'll have real influence. I know. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine, staring at the unsigned agreement. My phone rang. My mother. Mark came by today, she said quietly. He's very upset. Something about work. He wouldn't explain, but he kept asking about you. About me. He wanted to know if you were working with his company. I told him I didn't know. Are you? I took a breath. Mom, I can't discuss active contracts. But yes, I've been consulting with Northgate. Silence. Does Mark know? He does now. Oh, Lena. Her voice was pained. This is going to be difficult. It already has been. I signed the agreement the next morning. The paperwork was sealed until the official announcement event scheduled for the following week. According to the CFO, they wanted to make it public, a clear signal to employees and partners that Northgate was serious about operational excellence. Mark wasn't told directly. He'd find out with everyone else. I focused on preparing transition plans. The restructuring wouldn't happen overnight, and I wanted to make sure it was done carefully. No mass layoffs. No vengeful terminations. Just systematic improvements and accountability. 2 days before the announcement, the CFO called. Your brother has been asking questions. He knows something's happening. Has he figured it out? Not entirely. But he's scared. He came to my office demanding to know who sabotaged his initiatives. I closed my eyes. What did you tell him? The truth. That someone showed us a better way. He'll learn the rest at the event. That afternoon, Mark showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find him disheveled, his tie loose, his eyes wild. You went behind my back, Mark said, pushing past me into my apartment. I closed the door calmly. I didn't go behind anyone's back. Northgate hired me based on my reputation. You knew it was my company. I found out after they contacted me. By then, I'd already accepted the project. He paced my living room like a caged animal. You're sabotaging me. Showing them all my mistakes. I didn't sabotage anything, Mark. I documented problems and proposed solutions. That's my job. They're reviewing my position because of you. They're reviewing decisions that cost the company millions. If those decisions were yours, That's not my fault. He spun to face me. You couldn't handle me being successful. You had to tear me down. That actually stung. Is that really what you think? I asked quietly. What else would this be? Maybe it's me building something real. Maybe it's me being good at my job. Maybe it has nothing to do with you at all. He laughed bitterly. Your little consulting hobby. Come on. There it was. Even now, even with everything falling apart around him, he couldn't admit I'd actually succeeded. I have a major announcement event tomorrow, I said. You'll be there. You'll understand then. His face paled. What announcement? The event was held in Northgate's main conference center. Stakeholders filled the room, executives, department heads, major clients, even some media. I arrived early, dressed in my best professional suit, my materials organized in a slim portfolio. Mark was already there, sitting in the front row, his jaw tight. The CEO opened with remarks about Northgate's commitment to operational excellence and sustainable growth. Over the past 6 months, he said, we've worked with a consultant who helped us identify and address significant inefficiencies. Today, I'm pleased to announce the next phase of that relationship. Mark's hands gripped his chair armrests. The CEO smiled. This consultant brought something we desperately needed: objectivity, expertise, and genuine commitment to improvement. They never played politics. Never pursued personal agendas. They simply focused on making us better. He gestured toward me. Please welcome our new strategic partner, Lena Henley, founder and CEO of Henley Operations Consulting. Applause filled the room. I walked to the stage, shook the CEO's hand, and turned to face the audience. Mark sat frozen, his face ashen. Cameras flashed. People whispered to each other, clearly surprised. I didn't look at my brother. That restraint made the moment more powerful than any words could have been. The CEO described the partnership in detail. He explained how my firm would maintain ongoing operational oversight, how we'd work collaboratively with internal teams, how the goal was sustainable improvement, not quick fixes. What impressed us most, he said, was Ms. Henley's refusal to make this personal. She identified problems created by previous decisions, but she never attacked individuals. She focused on systems, not blame. He pulled up a slide showing projected savings, over $8 million in the next 2 years. The audience murmured appreciatively. This partnership represents a new chapter for Northgate, one built on transparency, data-driven decisions, and respect for the people doing the work. More applause. When he finished, reporters crowded forward with questions. One asked the CEO directly, "How did you find Ms. Henley?" "Through reputation and results. She was recommended by multiple industry contacts." Another reporter turned to Mark, microphone extended. "Mr. Henley, you work here. Did you have any involvement with bringing your sister's firm on board?" Mark's mouth opened and closed. Before he could fumble through an answer, the CEO smoothly intervened. Mr. Henley's division wasn't involved in the consultant selection process. That was handled by our CFO and operations leadership. Professional. Polite. But clear. After the formal event, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers. Employees thanked me for improvements they'd already seen. Clients expressed confidence in Northgate's direction. I answered questions, shook hands, and tried to process that this was actually happening. Mark disappeared before I could speak with him. Later that evening, my phone rang. "We need to talk." His voice was flat. "Okay." "Not on the phone. Tomorrow. Coffee." I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. The next morning, I met him at a cafe near his house. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. We sat in a corner booth, coffee cooling between us. "They're putting me under performance review," he said quietly. I nodded. I heard. They found documentation. Emails showing I pushed through those cost-cutting measures to impress senior management. I didn't actually analyze whether they'd work. "Why didn't you?" "Because I wanted to move up. I wanted to look decisive and bold. I thought short-term savings would make me look good. At least he was being honest now. What do you want from me? I asked. Mark stared into his coffee cup. I want you to protect me. Put in a good word with the CEO. Tell them I was trying to help. I leaned back. Mark, I won't lie for you. His jaw tightened. I'm your brother. Which is exactly why I can't compromise my integrity now. Everything I built, everything that led to this partnership, was based on being honest and objective. If I start playing favorites, I lose everything. So you'll just let them destroy me? No one's destroying you. They're holding you accountable. There's a difference. I could lose my job. Maybe. But that depends on what you do next. He looked up. What do you mean? I can't protect you from consequences. But I can recommend something. The company wants to implement training programs, helping managers understand operational impacts before making decisions. If you participate genuinely, if you actually learn and improve, I'll support that. Support it how? By telling the truth. That you made mistakes but you're willing to learn from them. That you have valuable experience that could help prevent others from making similar errors. He sat with that for a long moment. You really won't just make this go away? No. His hands trembled slightly. You've changed. I grew up. I had to. 2 weeks later, Northgate announced its restructuring plan. It was careful, methodical, and fair. No mass layoffs. No public shaming. Mark was reassigned to a training and development role, significantly less influence, but still employed. He would work with new managers, teaching them about operational decision-making. His mistakes would become teaching examples. It was humbling for him. But it wasn't cruel. Some people thought he got off easy. Others respected that the company was trying to rehabilitate rather than just punish. I stayed focused on the work. My firm grew quickly. I hired 3 new consultants. We moved into a real office space. My parents finally understood what I'd built. My mother came to visit the new office, walking through with wide eyes. I'm sorry we didn't take you seriously, she said. We were wrong. My father was quieter, but he hugged me tightly before leaving. You proved us all wrong, he whispered. I'm proud of you. One evening, about a month after everything settled, I was leaving Northgate after a meeting. Carlos, the shipping manager who'd first shown me the scheduling problems, caught up with me in the parking lot. Ms. Henley, got a minute? Of course. Carlos shifted his weight, looking almost shy. I just wanted to say thank you. For everything you did here. You helped more than you know. Your honesty about the problems made the solutions possible. He shook his head. No, I mean, you made this place sane again. Before you came, we felt invisible. Like management didn't care what actually happened on the floor. You listened. You fixed things. And you didn't throw people under the bus to do it. His voice cracked slightly. My crew talks about you like you're some kind of hero. Because you treated us like we mattered. I didn't know what to say. That matters to us, he finished. More than you probably realize. He shook my hand and walked back toward the building. I stood in the parking lot for a long moment, his words settling over me. This was the victory that mattered. Not proving Mark wrong. Not earning the partnership. Not even the money or recognition. It was this, making a real difference for people who needed someone to fight for them. I got in my car and drove home, finally at peace. The girl whose business was a joke had become someone people trusted. And that was worth more than any revenge could ever be.